As Moscow grows, housing affordability is becoming an issue. What is City Council's role in ensuring housing remains fair and affordable? And I think that could certainly encompass what is the mayor's role as well. And how might you propose to increase the availability of affordable housing?
Couple of things. You increase the fair and affordable housing by making sure that housing opportunities exist for development. And it's not just relatively cheap, ordinary kinds of housing that is primarily the apartment business. What you really need is to have some serious effort to get funding targeted for small houses, and we can do that within the city of Moscow. We can be the leaders in this area to encourage that kind of development throughout the community. There are some areas close to downtown that are flat that would be such attractive areas for walkable, reasonable development for all ages.
Mr. Lamb?
One of the things you can do to have cheaper housing is to have more of it. We do not have that. That's one of the tough things we have right now. We've always had that in Moscow. You take surrounding communities outside of Pullman, not counting them because they have a similar issue that Moscow does. The more houses you have, the less the price of them would be. Now, as us here in Moscow, we're very strategic in how we do development, which is a smart thing. That's not a bad thing. But that also drives housing prices here in Moscow. A lot of this about supply and demand makes a big difference. One other thing I'll add here, millennials, and I read a recent study on this. A lot of millennials, where it used to be a young guy or a woman, 25 or so, would spring out and buy a house of some type. Millennials are not doing it. They're renting right now, and they're doing that well into their 30s, just like they're having kids. So it's just a different social paradigm shift that we're in as well.
Thank you. Would any of the council candidates like to approach it? Mr. Parrish?
This is something that I'm on the Planning and Zoning Commission, and in recent weeks we've been talking about a concept called tiny homes. And these are homes that are sometimes 200 to 400 square feet. The point is that it would provide another mechanism for affordable housing. The key is, and Planning and Zoning is going to be working on this, the key is to make sure that the city's zoning ordinances are compatible with being able to do that. So we are working on that as an issue right now. Thank you.
Any other candidates for council want to address that? Mr. C?
Anyone that's been here for any length of time has watched the housing boom and bust in Moscow. It also happens in Pullman as a product of the colleges. You build a jillion apartments, they slowly fill out, they stop building them, then they get so full that they come back 5 or 6 years later and build more. The same thing, single family housing. Back in the 1990s, you could not find a place to live in the Quad Cities. Everybody went to put a for rent sign out, couldn't drive it in the ground before somebody was screaming, "I'll take it." I served on a task force with the county on housing at that time. The city also had a task force. We started Sojourners Alliance. We started Habitat for Humanity. I worked with the Idaho Housing Finance Agency to get the city to give them 5 acres on the south side of what's now White Avenue. I wrote a block grant to take the street out there to that housing. We can do that again, but that'll get you some subsidized housing to help people be able to afford it.
Thank you.
Yeah, so as we continue to grow, even at a relatively slow pace, I think this is going to continue to become a more pressing issue locally. I fully support the work of the Moscow Affordable Housing Trust, whose mission it is to create and preserve safe, inclusive, and affordable housing opportunities in keeping with the character of the community. However, this is not currently enough to meet this demand. One of the main reasons for renting rather than owning a home is because housing is not available in an affordable price range. I certainly had this experience when I bought this year. I know, talking about millennials, the challenges of home ownership. And so I think that the city could play a role in this, talking about exploring new zoning laws that would encourage high-density building. As tiny homes become more prevalent, that's going to come up at a state level, and I would like to see the city explore that as well to make that possible. And so as someone who sits on the Moscow Affordable, again, Fair and Affordable Housing Commission, I think that, we can make recommendations, but having a city that prioritizes this is important and implements.